All right, I think we can get started here, and I'll just keep an eye out on the waiting room just to make sure I let people in. Hi everyone, my name is Kelvin. I'm from the marketing team here at Rival Technologies and Reach3 Insights. Welcome to Outliers. This is a live event series that we've created where we invite research leaders and marketing experts to talk about some of the hottest topics in insights today. So today we're talking about emerging research technology. Before I bring on our speaker today, I'd like to just give you guys a quick overview of how this event works, just so you know what to expect. Basically, this is a very conversational, intimate and interactive session. And so, I in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'll have a conversation with the speaker. And then the last 10 minutes or so are really meant for audience questions. And so if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to use the chat feature here on Zoom and share your feedback, share your comments. I would love to hear them. And in fact, I'm gonna do something different this week. And just to get everyone warmed up on the chat, I'm very curious where everyone is calling in from today. So if you don't mind, just putting in where you're calling in from in the chat. Okay, New York, New Jersey, Vancouver, Kansas, awesome. How about you, Anne? Washington State, awesome. There we go. That was a plot twist, actually. So yeah, thanks everyone for for sharing. Interesting fact, Bala is actually calling in from Sydney today, where it is currently 4 a.m. So I appreciate your time, Bala. Thanks for your time. Okay, so we'll
You're
get started
welcome.
here. Bala, I've known Bala for a while now, so it's kind of interesting thinking of an introduction question. But Bala, I'd like to kind of just give a quick intro on you. In your LinkedIn bio, it's interesting because you mentioned that what excites you the most about your role is the interplay of technology and insights. So, maybe I think that's a good place for us to start. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your interest in tech and insights? Like, how did that start, and how did that lead to where you are now at Reach3?
Yeah, that's a long answer, Kelvin, but I'll give you the short version as what drives this passion and perspective. At some point in my career, I realized that insights continue to mollycoddle the processes and methodology and all those aspects where there were all these big changes coming about in technology. Interestingly enough, every established methodology has an equivalent tech solution out there. You could argue whether it completely replaces or it does elements of it. That's an arguable point. But it got to a place where we had technology solutions for every established methodology in research. And the approach to technology by my researcher colleagues was some of it was resistance, some of it was lack of understanding, but um, technology was seen as a loss of rigor, which is not the case. So that's where this whole interest came in, to say that if you embrace technology, you don't necessarily need to lose the rigor of research that have been built with over decades of practice. So that's where it all began, and piloting, experimenting with pieces of tech, and how it brought us closer to traditional approaches is where I started spending more time and interest and energy. And to your question, at Reach3, we majority of our work happens on the rival tech, but I doubt anyone at Reach3 is going to ever say that that's a be all end all solution when it comes to tech. There is we have our eyes wide open, and and we are looking at every new piece of technology and how it can work with research and insights. From a small minuscule example, which is um, using animated emojis where you can slide your thumb from left to right. Does that or will that replace a 10 or 11 point scale? We do things like this. At the other end, we are also doing things like we are doing facial coding. We are, emotions are involuntary. A consumer can say that they like your product, but their body language will tell you that they don't. And just using technology to go beyond what the consumer is telling us, so that we can get to the bottom of how they feel
Mhm.
about a product or service is a perspective that is quite live and kicking, and everyone gets excited at Reach3. So being at Reach3 allows me to pursue that interest, and that's what works.
Yeah, thanks for that overview. Now, I invited you to Outliers because you recently wrote a fascinating article about research technology, or sometimes referred to as RESTech, and it's going to be on Green Book later this month. Now, in that article, you pointed out that research technology really saw a huge surge during the pandemic, and you say that using tech is no longer optional. So, from what you've seen these past few years, how did the pandemic accelerate the adoption of emerging technology?
Yeah, and adoption is the operative word here. Um, um, the pandemic did not create research technology solutions, but it just forced a whole lot of people to embrace the technology that's out there and has been kicking around for a bit longer. So I I guess while everyone there are lots of people who've started dabbling with research technology. The technology did exist, and what I'm seeing as a new trend is conversion, or people trying to stitch up solutions so that they can do a little bit more, and that is a big attitudinal shift, as opposed to finding a research technology that replaces a methodology. So, it's not about saying let's not do focus groups anymore, let's do something else which has a tech solution, but it's about appreciating that if I do a combination of a few elements or a few pieces of tech, I can get a little bit closer to consumers. I can do things a little bit faster. I can do it at scale, and I can do it from the comfort of my home without having to trade off good quality insights.
Yeah. Yeah, and you kind of touched on this already, but one of the key takeaways from your article is this need to use different technologies to gain a deeper understanding of the customer. To your point, there's no single technology or technique that can kind of bring everything together if you want to capture nuances. I think you have like a million client stories that kind of illustrate this, but maybe to kind of bring it to life, can you share one story with us that kind of shows the power of using different technologies to gain deeper insights?
Yeah, it's that's a hard one to pick one. But let me make it easier for myself. Let me talk about the most recent one, and this was a study for a large beverage, a large global beverage manufacturer, and their business need was to own an emotive expression around their beverage. And typically, when you do projects like this, you would rely on things like in-home visits, accompanied shops. You would want to put consumers in different situations, and you'd want them to react to that, so that you can draw into where the resistance is and where the permission levels lie. Now, it was hard to do that, firstly, at a global scale, because one, it's quite expensive. The other, traveling to other parts of the world is not as easy as it used to be, and it's but the business need is not going to change. They still need to do that to grow and grow as a brand. So what we designed as an approach was the we went in with video questions, which monkey see, monkey do, so that allowed consumers to record videos and send their responses back as well. So we collected a whole lot of videos. We also had in-depth interviews as follow-up, so that we could dig deeper. There was a quantitative survey at the end, so that we could size those benefits. But within those three big pieces, there were things that we were doing were things like we were collecting those videos, uploading them into an application which allowed them to capture their facial expressions and their emotions. And like I was saying earlier, facial expressions are involuntary. You might be saying something based on your demeanor, the way you typically speak, but it sees through all of that, and you can recognize how strongly a consumer feels about a particular topic when they're talking about it. We also did a voice tone analysis, where you have benchmarks on how people talk about things and what those emotions mean. So using all of those available tech within this medium allowed us to go indoors. It allowed us to go to people's homes at large scale, be there on those occasions when they were consuming their beverage, and we were able to use applications to understand how are they really feeling about it. And that all came together to quite a robust understanding of how this client could own that emotive perspective. So the point, long-winded way of explaining that, while there were traditional methods that we followed through, there was a lot of tech use case. There were a lot of tech that was used to go a little bit further, a little bit deeper, and draw out those responses from consumers.
Right.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so like being able to understand nuances in emotions. You can't just send a survey and expect to kind of get that richness. So I love how you were able to use different technologies to still get to the research and the business goal, which was to understand exactly how people felt. So yeah, thanks for sharing that example. I'd like to dive into some of your tips in the article. One of the bigger themes was actually around this conversation with research tech vendors. So the first thing that you mentioned was about the length of the relationship. You mentioned specifically that there's this natural tension between, what researchers are trying to achieve and what tech companies want from the business relationship. I work for a tech company, so obviously I found that very eye-opening. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you meant?
Yeah, sure. It's one of those things that's a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation, and uncomfortable because the focus and attention is at loggerheads, right? So let me explain. Let me try and explain this point. The 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 technology world is aspirational for the 7x, 12x, 15x valuation of their company, which comes from recurring revenue. So being a SaaS solution is what every tech company aspires to be and move in that direction. Now, the research world predominantly works on projects, has a business need. That business need needs to be addressed. You either need to grow a brand, you need to grow a subscription, you need to fix a pain point, you need to test a new idea. So they're finite kind of focus areas. So when your budgets in the research world, when your budgets, focus, attention is on a finite project where you move from one to the other, buying a piece of tech which is aspirational to have a long-term relationship is becomes a hard fit. It becomes hard because one is hoping to have a long-term relationship and the other is hoping to finish a project and move on to the next one, where you may or may not need that tech again. You're not sure.
Mhm.
So that's the tension that usually prevails. So it becomes a conversation that needs to be had so that both can find a happy medium. And the famous words of Nelson Mandela, one of the great outcomes of a meeting is when both parties walk away equally unhappy.
Right. Now, in addition to kind of like the subscription versus ad hoc type of relationship, another thing is that you kind of need to talk to the vendor about is pricing. So, typically research projects include direct costs, which are then passed on to the client. But in the article, you mentioned this fact that, tech is not necessarily a direct cost. So I would love for you to expand on that more.
Yeah, well, there are many reasons why any business would want to embrace or um, would involve in getting tech in the play of insights. But I believe there are four core needs that it comes down to, which is one is you buy new tech so that you can have an impact at a strategic level. So you look to have an impact at a much larger scale in the organization. The second is that there is a need for real-time information. The third is it allows for more experimentation because the having tech allows you to replicate and do things a little bit faster. And the third and the fourth is scale. You most clients will approach this with either a few of these reasons or all of these reasons. Now, with that said, the the direction of where all this is going is businesses want to stay on this unprecedented speed that's come up, which is now a reality in our industry, and having a piece of tech that replicates something that you already are familiar, comfortable, and have knowledge around is never straightforward. So it's you don't stop doing something because you bought a piece of tech. A new piece of tech will do some aspects better. It might not do everything better. So just having that conscious view of this is important to me and therefore I will buy this tech so that I can do it for one of these four reasons is perhaps the perspective that takes a little bit of time to people for people to wrap their head around.
Mm. And another sticky point is liability, right? So when a brand is working with an agency and tech is being used in the project, I think it becomes a little bit vague who owns liability of the technology. So yeah, maybe talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, yeah. This is best explained with an example. Um, let's take three parties, right? So let's say there's a business, there's a company that has a product or service that they roll out to the market, and they have a need for insights. So they engage with a consulting firm, and they say and they tell them what their business need is and how they're going to go about resolving that. The the consulting firm knows of this piece of tech or a technology solution that will help them do this. Now, all three parties need to come together to execute. Right? Sounds simple enough. Sounds very typical. It's something that happens in our industry uh, quite often. Now, who owns the liability here? And the liability has multiple levels. Um, I'm exaggerating to prove a point, but let's say hypothetically the technology company can only provide 22 hours in a day of uptime. That's all they can guarantee. Or they can only take on a liability of for $2 million or $5 million. The client who owns the customer, who has the relationship with their customers and consumers, probably needs more uptime, probably needs a larger liability clause built in. Now, they who's going to take on that liability? If the relationship is between the three parties, the consulting firm can't be expected to take customer liability because the customer is owned by the client. The consulting firm can't take on the liability of the technology offer because that's owned by the technology company and that's designed based on their outlay of their tech stack. Where does the how do you engage in a business contract when all these three parties are not controlling all aspects? So can the tech and the client then get on a contract? Can the consulting firm and the client get on a contract? Can the consulting firm and the tech company get on a contract? And now you see where the problem lies, where how many contracts are you going to have? How many procurement conversations are you going to have? And if you try to tick all those boxes, you will be having these conversations for a minimum of 6 months because not everyone will be able to take on those kind of liabilities.
Right. Yeah. So to just to make that, I guess just to double click on that, Bala, is the solution then to bring on legal counsel early, or do you talk about liability early on in the conversation? Just curious about how you, because it sounds like a, a, a big challenge. I just want to make sure, from your experience, what we get your thoughts in terms of how you kind of work around that.
Yeah. So the 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 path of least resistance is typically between who owns the customer to who provides a tech solution. That relationship, if is the path of least resistance. But however, does come with a bit of a challenge because if the technology company sells their tech to the end client, what tends to happen is the client researcher does not have the resources to do the consulting aspect of once the data is collected
Right.
or once the data has been harnessed. So there's got to be that angle to that relationship as well. And then retaining the aspects which are related to your customers' privacy, and stripping that out, and then having a relationship with your consulting firm who can then provide the insights on top of that. So the point I'm trying to make is that some aspects of your customer's relationship needs to be still retained by the enterprise,
Right. I
and
see.
that allows them to then have this relationship between the tech and their customers' data privacy. And the consulting arm, or the consulting part of this whole relationship, needs to be done alongside, in while respecting the the, the privacy between the customers or consumers and the brand or the company.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, we'll open it up to audience questions here in a bit. Just a couple of more questions. So, a lot of brands are nervous about bringing in new technology, no matter how much it's needed. There's this old adage of that says something like, no one gets fired for buying IBM. I think that's true in research as well, right? Like no one gets fired for buying Qualtrics or something more established. Now, to get around this nervousness, though, you've encouraged clients in the past to do things like, parallel studies and other similar tactics just to kind of mitigate the risk. So, yeah, can you share some thoughts on how you reduce risk when adopting new technology?
Yeah, here's something interesting that I always encounter, which is, if a technology is established, um, right now, let me think about it the other way. Most technology startups will chase dollars, right? So they will do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and there will be a lot of flexibility in the way they approach, because they don't know what sticks. So they will try and do everything that they want to, or they can. What that does is that they are willing to bend and bow to try and match or try and meet the buyer's need, and provide and fit their solutions into that need, till the time where it gains trajectory, and it starts becoming established. Once it's established, the only way to scale in the world of technology is to put boundaries around it. So that's, once it's in a box, once it's a finite solution, you can scale, and that's with anything. So established technology tends to be more in a box, and emergent tech tends to be more fluid. Now, the excitement and the interest and the fun of it all is in the emergent tech. So when you're working with emergent tech, it is emergent, and that sheer term means that a lot of it is unproven, untested, or you're uncharted waters. So you've got to have support. You've got to have some some dev support, some deeper knowledge around what your needs are and how you can work with that tech, so that you can utilize it the way you want to. Because nothing fits for purpose out of the box. There is always a little bit of a tweak that's required. There's always a little bit of an adaptation that's required. And that happens a lot easier with emergent tech. Larger tech tends to be more in a box, and you buy that solution, which you need to make it work. So if you're experimenting with the cool new tech, which is fun nevertheless, you've got to be conscious that there will be some bit of effort at your end
Mhm.
required to bend and bow that solution so that it works for you.
Right.
And there's another layer to this, which is cost. Um, the when you buy new tech or when you buy any kind of tech, the cost is a long-term perspective. It is not, it's not instantaneous. In the long run, it'll pay for itself. It should pay for itself. And you'll be able, because you'll be able to do things at scale, you'll be able to repeat the process, you'll be able to get a lot more out of it. But on the onset, it it tends to be more effort. It tends to be more of your involvement. So in the short run, it may not necessarily be the cheapest solution, but in the long run, it will be. But in the short run, you need to put in the effort to bend and bow to make it work to what your needs are.
Right. Yeah, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm going to ask my last question here. And you touched on this already. I just want to expand on it. You mentioned about this need to really rely or lean on, customer success or customer support, because no matter how amazing the tech is, if it's new, if it's emerging, you're probably going to run into any issues. You're probably going to have questions, right? So a two-part question. First of all, when you're considering a new piece of tech, how do you know if someone's CS team is actually good? Like, how do you evaluate that in advance? And then the second thing is, once you become a customer, do you have any tips in terms of how you create that close relationship with CS so that once you need help, it's easy to get that help that you need?
Yeah. And this is just my, I should preface the response to this question that it's it, you know this is a view, and I'm not sure that this is in its entirety is a solution. But customer success is recognized, rewarded, and managed by by managing a pipeline of revenue, right? So a customer success manager will be provided a stack of clients, and they are expected to manage that, which kind of results in this behavior where you have weekly whips and where you have regular conversations, and you are rewarded for making your client reliant on you and what your services are, so that they can you get the most out of tech. This this in a way poses a problem, because you are still reliant on an individual for you to get the most out of that tech. People need to take holidays. People need to take time off. There are things that happen in people's lives, and that puts the risk on that relationship. If customer success is if the measure becomes that you need to, if a customer success manager works towards making their job redundant, in other words, if you're my client and my perspective is that you should stop calling me for any reason because I need to educate you enough that you need to be able to run on your own,
Mhm.
then I'm being successful. So that I pass on my knowledge, pass on my expertise, and you pretty much are now self-reliant, and I can then do that with others. So the recognition of making your job redundant by passing on your knowledge should be the measure of customer success. So a great customer success relationship should be about knowledge transfer, and the focus of making the end user more self-reliant, as opposed to making it reliant on the individual, which is the customer success manager.
Right. Cool. Yeah. Excellent. That makes sense to me. Um, Yeah, so Bala, we're at time. So in case people have questions or anything like that, obviously when your article is out on Green Book, we'll share that with everyone. But in the meantime, if people want to get in touch with you, could you just tell everyone how they can do that?
Of course, we're you know, first name dot last name at reach3 at reach3.com. You can email us. We're active or via Kelvin, but we're happy to have this conversation around any new tech, given we've had exposure or knowledge or with tertiary industries. But we're happy to have a conversation irrespective of what you're trying to do, and experimentation is something that we're quite excited about. So if you feel like you just want to have a conversation, please reach out. We'll be more than happy to have that conversation and do our best to help.
Sweet. Now, Siddharth actually put in a last minute question here. So I wonder if we can tackle it. Siddharth, would
Sure.
you like to go online? I would love to, if you want to unmute, you can ask the question directly as well.
Yeah, sure. And just so everybody knows, I'm with Reach3 as well. But my question is about mitigation of tech, the tech risk, right, Bala? Because I've been around research a long time, as have most of us, I think, on this call. And what I see is that a lot of the tech involvement, if you will, with the research process seems to be from a full SaaS model kind of approach. And I don't know if that's a fact or not, but that's kind of my anecdotal experience. And in that scenario, you as a researcher are buying the tech platform often from folks who don't have deep experience in research. So the model where there is an interface, i.e. a full service research firm that is managing the tech for you, so to speak, is that an effective way to mitigate risk? And if so, why do we not see more of that type of model?
Um, I'm gonna the short answer for that is, the good old adage that, money makes the world go round. So the revenue model in that kind of an approach is probably what's driving that kind of behavior. If a full serve if a full service consulting firm is expected to execute on a project, they need to embrace what they need to embrace all aspects, which is the client's business reality, as well as the what the tech has to offer. But I think that the future in this space is going to be of being a coach. We've got to be a coach to help our clients get the most out of a tech stack that they buy, and that is constantly evolving. There is no one tech solution for all your problems. Any business today might have a tech solution that does an aspect of their business really well, and must be well ingrained in their business, but things change. They need to evolve and embrace, and they got to onboard other new tech vendors into their tech stack, into their insights playground, so that the role of the full service agency or consulting firm needs to be that of coaching the end client on how they can evolve in that way. And that's the assistant model of coaching people is probably where the play is at, as opposed to executing a project and then disappearing until the next need arises, is probably a reducing space, which because insights are being withheld more within an organization. There are more leaner teams trying to do a lot more, they are managing expectations. Tech might not provide all the solutions, but it provides some solutions faster. You know, those kind of shift in perspective is what's forcing our industry to kind of think about how we retain our relationship with end clients. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, that's yeah. I think I mean I hear what you both of you are saying though. Like Siddharth, like if because yeah, there's like a lot of research tech vendors now who are coming from like they don't have necessarily the research expertise. So it's kind of interesting to kind of basically lean on the consulting firm um, to basically manage that, right? So yeah, definitely I see both sides. So yeah, thanks everyone again for joining us. If there are no any more if there are no more questions, we'll leave it at that. We're taking the next 2 weeks off because of conferences. Reach3 will be at Quirk Chicago next week, and then Reach3 and Rival will be at IEX 2 weeks from now. But we'll get back to Outliers after that. So in the meantime, thanks everyone again for joining us, and we'll share around Bala's article as well once that is out. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
Kelvin. Thanks, Bala. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.